It is Tuesday, November 5th, and it is time to track the tropics from sunny Central Florida. I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
All right, so Jeremy, we have in the month of November, post time change, a tropical system doesn't happen often. I think the last time that we really had something decent to track was Nicole a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and last year we didn't have any named storms during the month of November, so it's about every other year we average a named storm. This year, we already have a couple. Or was Patty again? It was still going in November,
Right.
but it doesn't count for October, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So Patty made its way into the northeastern Atlantic, and then we have Rafael right here, which you're taking a look at. This is going to get its act together today.
Yeah, absolutely. The satellite presentation is good. Hurricane hunters have been investigating the storm system. Just to share with you the latest data from the National Hurricane Center, and we'll be getting an update here within the next few minutes' time, of course. But there's the morning 4 a.m. advisory. Remember, post time change, Hurricane Center shifts this, but expected to become a hurricane, we think, late tonight or early tomorrow morning. Category 1 storm as it passes through or very near the Cayman Islands. Across Cuba, may even bring hurricane conditions to Havana, and then from there into the Gulf of Mexico, staying a hurricane off of Florida's southwest coast, and then weakening as it encounters basically a face full of wind shear in the northern Gulf of Mexico. And at that point in time, Jeremy, that's where the forecast models are really struggling with where it eventually goes.
Yeah, that's why the spaghetti plots, model tracks are really all over the place. They're very consistent, maybe the next few days, and then they start to spread out. In the shorter term, though, pretty good consensus once it gets through Cuba into the Gulf, and then really kind of all over the place. But as you mentioned, the good news is once those models really start to spread apart, it kind of hits some wind shear, and it's also going to start encountering some cooler water. I mean, it is November and this is not peak season anymore,
Right.
so don't expect this to get into the Gulf and then kind of blow up like they do sometimes. Certainly, though, as it crosses Cuba into the Gulf, that water is still pretty warm, and then it should encounter water temperatures that drop off a bit. But you're looking at some advisories there, and parts of Florida, tropical storm watch.
Yeah. So again, just to reiterate what this means. Okay. So the Keys, the middle and lower Keys under tropical storm watches, which means that tropical storm conditions are possible within 48 hours time. In red there, the western tip of Cuba under a hurricane warning, meaning hurricane conditions are expected within 36 hours time. The Caymans expecting hurricane conditions as well. Jamaica under a tropical storm warning, tropical storm conditions are expected. But yeah, for the Keys, being that they're such kind of narrow strips of land and a vastness of the straits there, we do suspect that tropical storm conditions are possible there. The expectation, though, spoke with the National Weather Service, is that Southwest Florida does not go under tropical storm watches. There may be some gusty winds, that sort of thing, but the expectation is not along the shoreline. Offshore, sure, and you can see that yellow highlighted there.
Yeah, and I know a lot of those areas after a couple of close passes and also direct impacts this year from tropical systems are probably a little leery of also a storm surge.
Oh, yeah.
So certainly tides will be higher, but again, the type of surge might be a little bit of a question yet.
Right. So looking at the various computer models, right? So the idea here is that as this storm system works its way up toward Cuba, it gets its act together, right? And very clearly, just looking at the presentation here, it looks like a hurricane, right? It's got that look. It continues across Havana and will probably bring them some real nasty weather. Thankfully, not expecting this to become like a category 2, 3, 4, 5, the Hurricane Center even back down on the intensity just a little bit, staying far enough off the shoreline of Florida. But from there, there is such a question. Does it end up in Louisiana? Does it end up in Texas or the Florida Panhandle? Or does it just completely fizzle out? And that's where you see those spaghetti models, Jeremy, as you mentioned, they are really struggling with kind of this overall idea.
Yeah, and also when you were showing that down there by the Keys, there is a slight risk of severe weather for parts of the Florida Keys, and then even Southwest Florida. Maybe it looks like Marco Island towards Fort Myers, a marginal risk, and I would assume that would probably be some sort of quick spin up tornado. Not a repeat of what we saw with Milton, but obviously tropical systems known to produce some tornadoes, and that's the part of Florida probably needs to watch out for severe weather.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Right? Like even if this is a weaker system, you're still finding yourself on that right front side of the storm. And so because of that, there is that thought process that there could be some nastier weather. I think the saving grace though in this entirety is by watching how Rafael works in to the Gulf of Mexico, right? And this is just kind of looking at wind shear. But notice right as it gets into the Gulf, you start to see that wind shear envelope just slam right into it. That wind coming from the southwest atmospherically, it's not gross wind shear, but like right in here, Thursday, Friday, there is a significant southwest shear element there, Jeremy. So, I've seen some of our colleagues in Louisiana talking about how if this was earlier, it would definitely be a different scenario than if it was a November system for them.
Yeah, because that shear is probably tied to like a front coming down that may pick it up. So we'll see kind of what that shear does. But that's why it really looks like this kind of puts the brakes on a little bit, and then also weakens. Some models sort of cut this under that trough up there to the north that
Yeah.
swings in, and that's why they take it more westerly. Hopefully, as this is weakening a lot, it just maybe gets picked up and it's a rainmaker, and there's really no wind issue with it.
Okay, so kind of an interesting little thing that I found. All right, I want to share with you. I looked back at the month of November to see named storms. Where do November named storms go? And believe it or not, Jeremy, there has never on record been a storm that formed in the month of November and hit Louisiana or Texas. Did you know that?
Hmm. No, but I do now.
Yeah,
So the
see, love the
western
nerddom.
the western half of the Gulf of Mexico looks like no landfalls there unless there was one down in Mexico, but at least for the U.S.,
Yeah.
Louisiana and Texas, and I assume these records probably go back to the 1800s, correct?
They do. And there's another statistic. I'm just going to throw it out. And you have to understand I do the forecasting in Florida. So my nerd stats are going to go to Florida, okay? Hurricanes. 8% of all November storms, named storms, strike Florida, which is a pretty decent number. There have been 3 hurricanes to strike Florida since record keeping began. And here's the interesting stat. Florida is the only state to have a November hurricane strike since the 1860s. There's another one for you.
All right. So that was Nicole.
Well, we've had Nicole. Hold on. I've got them all here. We've had Nicole. We had Kate. And then there was, I want to say 1935.
Okay.
1935. Stand by, stand by, stand by.
I
Yes.
think Kate was at 1985.
1985. Yeah. When you were in high
Okay.
school.
And then yeah, right. And then another one in November, I believe, hit North Carolina. So
So
there's
the
been
North Carolina one, remember I said Florida is the only state to have gotten a hurricane hit since the 1860s. It was North Carolina that was like 1865 or something like
okay.
that. Yeah,
All right, yeah. So for my area, we have never had a landfall of a hurricane during
right.
the month of November, and only 4 all time. And if this one, assuming this one misses the Keys, we probably won't see a hurricane landfall with this one either. Maybe a tropical storm, but we'll have to see how fast this starts to fall apart.
But it makes sense why these storms want to try and go right. This time of year, Jeremy, we've got cold fronts that are coming in. So it always wants to nudge these pathways to the right and away from the United States. Thankfully, every now and then we get one hitting the US. But it makes sense why your area hasn't gotten hit and why anything that maybe would to try to form in the Western Caribbean or in the Western Gulf sneaks through Florida every so on. But it's an interesting, I don't want to say like we're in uncharted waters, but if this strikes Louisiana or Texas as a named storm, it would be the first one on record. That is kind of a little interesting statistic.
Yeah, and after this one, we still have a little bit of the month of November left to kind of monitor. So I know we've been seeing a little bit of interest down there From Puerto Rico to the Bahamas, really not a lot going on with that at this second, just a 20% chance of development down there. Some models are trying to spin up a low there a little bit. Doesn't look very impressive on models right now.
Yeah.
So that area, though, I would say from Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, and up towards the Bahamas, that area, since the new pattern has started to set up kind of post Milton, has really at least piqued my interest
Yeah.
for what may be coming next hurricane season.
Oh, I would 100% agree, especially if you're looking at the models down the road where there's even more activity potentially kind of sneaking those directions.
Yeah, because we had Oscar that moved over those areas. You have Rafael, which is headed towards Cuba now, and then you have that area of interest sitting down there. So there is a general
Yeah.
over probably a several week stretch here, part of the new pattern
Yeah.
where we have these lows or troughs over that area, and some of them have already been tropical. And we say, hey, if something is tropical in October and November, that sort of amplifies or
Right.
multiplies our confidence for the next season in what may happen.
Yeah. So let's take a look and just kind of get an idea, Jeremy, of what's ahead, right? This is the GFS model. All right. So that purple dot there, that's Rafael pulling to the north into the Gulf of Mexico. But there's that area, Jeremy, around Puerto Rico and Hispaniola behind it. And as Rafael, according to the GFS, moves toward like Mississippi, Alabama, maybe Louisiana, this area South Florida, it's weakening, but it's still an area of low pressure. Is it tropical? Is it non-tropical? Is it weak? We'll have to wait and see. But that's the area, Jeremy, that you were just talking about.
Yeah, and that is something that when we were kind of marking our charts and looking at sort of areas of interest for the next season coming up, that is something that we'll definitely pay close attention to, because if it's something that kind of strengthens a little bit over the Bahamas and then brushes by South Florida, whether it's just a low or not, it is something that we will pay very close attention to.
Right.
Because remember, last fall, a lot of the things that we highlighted for this season were not tropical.
Right.
They were just low pressure areas. And then we kind of fast forward them into a hurricane season and kind of forecast what they'll be. So any low this time of year, especially close to the coast or islands, we take note of it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, right? So there's that. Will be interesting to see how that plays out. Then afterward, the GFS wants to do another thing around the Yucatan. Okay, thanks for that. And then afterward, at least gets a little bit quieter. So that's the GFS. Let's look at the European.
And while you're pulling that one up, I mean, it does make sense. If something is going to form this time of year, we always say the Caribbean, that's some of the warmest water
Yeah.
and probably an area most protected from shear right now.
Oh, 100%. I just don't like to see it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Have no
I'm ready
desire to
for
see it.
if the season could just wrap up today. It's been busy enough.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. All right, so that's the European showing Rafael pulling into the Gulf of Mexico, trying to show some sort of lowering pressure around the Dominican Republic and Haiti. It's not as kind of set in stone, but you can very clearly see kind of around Cuba there, around the 10th of November, something. Not anything big, but something, and then afterward, we start to watch a pretty nice cold front. So the models are trying to figure some things out, but the potential is there to see something even beyond Raphael. So I think, hurricane season may go right up to the bitter end. Hopefully no big threats though.
Right. And I don't know about down in your area. I know Milton gave you all kinds of rain. You're probably maybe good on rain, but up by my area
Yeah.
yesterday was we had about 3/10 of an inch of rain, and that was really our first rain since Helene.
Yeah.
So we have had this huge extended dry spell. We finished the third driest October. We're abnormally dry to moderate drought
Yeah.
across our area right now. So we don't want to wish any tropical systems
Yeah.
upon us, but it looks like we may get a little moisture from Raphael thrown up into the southeast.
Yeah.
So at least we could see some rain. We don't want too much, but if we could get an inch or two of rain, that would be great.
Yeah, we got plenty of rain from the systems. As a matter of fact, the Keach Byram Drought Index, and I'm just showing this for our area, is very moist. This measures soil moisture. So
Hmm.
beyond just looking at like rainfall numbers, right? Like we're not deep dark like we were post post Milton, but we're still, we're still very, very moist. So what we don't want is a significant rain event. Some showers, fine,
Hmm.
but yeah. So to that point, agreed. But hopefully we'll be able to get through. For my area though, November is typically the driest month of the year, so we kind of need this to be a little drier, frankly.
Yeah, you might get a chance to dry out a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah. So we're at 17 named storms so far this year.
Yep.
Our forecast was 16 to 20, so I think that range is looking good. Our hurricanes, we may end up being off by one or so, and I think the forecast that we had for major hurricanes will end up in that range. So
Yeah.
our forecast from March 1st definitely still on track, and it's been busy, and certainly I think everyone in Florida and the Southeast has had uh, plenty of activity this year and ready for this season to be done.
I think we're absolutely there. Yeah. As far as ace numbers, I didn't get a chance to build the graphic, so forgive me, everybody.
It's
Jeremy already
around
forgave me.
it's around 150,
Yeah.
and as we say, 120 is average. So we're guaranteed to be above average for ace, and then pending Rafael, what happens with that could add a few more points to it, and
Right.
then maybe a late November system or back half of the month.
Yeah. Perfect. Do you have anything else to add, my friend?
No, I think that's it, and we'll just kind of keep an eye on Rafael, and hopefully it just kind of stays away from land and then weakens.
All right. We'll be with you no matter what. Jeremy and I are tracking the tropics. All right. Hopefully, we don't have any more storms. And hopefully, now we just get to devote our full time efforts outside of our full time jobs to our hurricane season forecast for next year. We're already very much establishing the new pattern and trying to see what the harvest of these little forecast seedlings are.
Yeah, and I think Rafael's definitely going to be a big part of that puzzle.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, from sunny Central Florida, I'm West 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22